So friends, we continue keep an eye on events on the front lines of Ukraine, Russia and the news. And today the situation is seriously escalating. The Ukrainian armed forces are actively using the provided cluster munitions. That's why yesterday the Russian shells Chasiv Yar with these cluster munitions. But before we begin the frontline overview, I kindly ask you to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel and click the bell icon to stay updated on all the latest news. On the Bakhmut direction, the Russians are attempting to correct their already unsuccessful position by conducting offensive operations in the area of Khromovo and Ivanivsk. However, their motives are unclear. The Russians failed to break through even when they controlled their flanks, and both Khromovo and Ivanivsk areas located on landlocked terrain where the Ukrainian armed forces can successfully counter any advancing forces in these directions. Additionally, there are reports of Ukrainian troops making progress in the direction of Andriivka. Nevertheless, the most difficult situation currently lies in the Lugansk direction. In the Svatovo area, the occupiers managed to take control of Rozdolivka and are continuing their offensive towards Nadia. There have been no changes on the map overnight, but the attacks haven't ceased and the invaders have amassed significant military assets and manpower for further advancement. There are also reports of the invaders moving towards Novoyegorivka, which is just 2 kilometers from the front line. Overall, the Russian counteroffensive continues as they seek to reclaim at least part of the liberated territory. In the Dvorichna area, the situation remains stable. There have been no offensive actions, only artillery shelling, and the front line remains unchanged. However, this situation is quite complicated in the Crimea region. The Russians are trying to press Ukrainian forces toward the river, and the situation is approaching critical. The Russians are conducting offensive actions today and have an advantage in terms of military equipment and manpower. As we can see, the rumors about 100,000 troops and 900 tanks are starting to prove true. Active combat has also resumed in the Siversk direction, with the invaders still trying to capture Belomorivka. They are conducting attacks from two directions in an attempt to encircle the settlement. On the Avdiivka direction, the Russian forces are conducting offensive actions in 4 directions simultaneously. They continue to advance, replenishing reserves and launching attacks on Ukrainian positions. However, over the past 24 hours, there have been no changes in the front line. All attacks are accompanied by heavy shelling, but despite all the difficulties, the Ukrainian armed forces are not retreating a single meter. In the Vuhledar direction, the offensive has temporarily ceased. There have been no official statements about new Russian attacks, but they are not wasting time and are attempting another offensive, this time in the direction of Novodarivka. However, they are experiencing losses and there have been no changes in the front line. On the Zaporizhia direction, the occupiers are not attempting any new offensives and are only conducting artillery shelling along the entire front line. The Ukrainian forces haven't conducted any attacks after their successful advance in the Robotyne and Verbovo areas, and the front line remains unchanged. As for Odessa, today is as tense as yesterday. Aerial attacks continue. At last night, the Russians targeted the port infrastructure in the Odessa region. 7 people were injured in the attack, and an agricultural warehouse and cargo tanks were damaged. In the Izmailovsky region, an attack by a Shahed drone was also reported. On the Russian side, there are interesting news reports. According to some sources, 3 missiles hit an ammunition depot near the village of Vilny in Crimea, causing a fire. There were also 2 powerful explosions reported in the Donsk settlement in the Simferopol district, with a 10-minute interval between them. Moreover, there is one particularly interesting news report. Based on the information provided to me, a drone attack damaged a high-rise building and a building on Komsomolsky Avenue in the heart of Moscow. Meanwhile, US Secretary of State Antony Blinken stated that Ukraine will receive American F-16 fighters, but it will take months before the Ukrainian armed forces can deploy them effectively. It's not just about the equipment itself, it also involves training, technical maintenance, and the ability to use them in military operations. All of this requires time. Even if a decision to transfer the F-16s was made tomorrow, it would still take months before they could be effectively utilized. Blinken added that the process regarding the F-16s is progressing. Furthermore, there are interesting developments concerning the Kahovka hydroelectric power station. According to Ukrbhydroenergo, this station might not be rebuilt if the country solves several technical issues related to the depletion of the Kakhovsky reservoir. Among the problems that need to be addressed are water supply shortage in Kherson, Zaporizhia and Dnipropetrovsk region, which depend on water supply from the reservoir. Losses of the irrigation system, which was supplied from the reservoir, and water supply to Crimea after its deoccupation. Also, water supply to the cooling ponds of the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant, and ensuring river navigation of the Dnipro. And I'd like to remind you that at the beginning of July, the head of the President's office, Andriy Yermak, showed the terrible depletion of the Dnipro River in the area of the Dniprovska hydroelectric power station in Zaporizhia. Photos demonstrated that it's possible to walk on the riverbed in this section. Despite experts previously mentioning a minimum reconstruction term of 5-7 years, the Cabinet of Ministers wants to rebuild the Kakhovka hydroelectric power station within 2 years. What will come out of this? We will find out soon. And that's all for now. Thank you for watching and see you next time. Bye bye.